Just give me a few seconds here and I can. All right, good morning, everyone. As I said, if you just heard me, we are on Facebook Live this morning. So good news, you will not be seen on Facebook, just the person speaking will. So you're in good shape. No need to hide from anyone. As we get to the end of the session, the email reminder, there is an evaluation for our Google form evaluation. We do appreciate any response you can give us, and we do share those with the Board Development Committee so they can review how the sessions went. So we do, again, appreciate your thoughts on that. As we are also a United Way partner agency, there is some demographic information that we share with United Way as well. So if you wouldn't mind, we would greatly appreciate it. So welcome to our last Breakfast on Board session for 2020. The session is called Staying Connected in Crisis. We have a little crisis outside at the moment, but hopefully everyone's enjoying that white stuff and hopefully it's not too icy. Hopefully everyone's home and warm and safe. So I know there's a few board members here. Chad Myers is here, Anna Breland Williams is here, and of course our one of our presenters, Joyce Santiago, is here. So welcome to them. Our staff that is here today, obviously with Leadership York, Executive Director Wilda Alessi is here. Joan Caruso is our FLY Coordinator, Future Leaders of York. Jessica Hoffman is here. She is our Fund Development Specialist. Angela Ang Aladef is here. She is the glue that keeps us together as a staff. She is our administrator. And Jen Klimchuk is here. She is the Mentorship York coordinator, and you'll be hearing from a few of those ladies in just a little bit. So just some Zoom stuff for those who don't do Zoom as often as some of us at Leadership York do. If you want to see more people on your screen, you can follow Steve Rogers here and click on the video, click on video settings. Click on video and that will open that screen up. And I have put on the left-hand side here, you do have to have these requirements, but then you'll be able to see up to 49 people in viewing that. Should you want to see people and our PowerPoint presentation this morning, you can click at the top of your screen on View Options, click on Side by Side. You'll then have these two white lines in between the PowerPoint and the cameras, and you can slide that left or right to make either side larger or smaller. We will be asking you to put some questions and comments in the chat. I know some of you have already done that this morning, but for those of you not familiar, at the bottom of your screen, you'll click on chat, and then you will simply type in your message. You can make a private message to just one person, or you could hopefully message that to everyone. We will have some staff keeping an eye on the chat room as well. If you would like to pin a video so you only see the person speaking, you click on the three dots that are on the upper right side of your screen, click on pin video, and you will have something that looks a little more like this. If you have joined us before with our Lunch on Board series, we have moved these sessions virtually this year. They will be starting in January. And the series this year is moving your nonprofit from striving to thriving, with these 4 sessions in January, February, March, and April. They are $25 per seminar, but we hope that you will take the whole series for $90. Again, they are held via Zoom, the same type of format we're at this morning. And last call for our Nonprofit Leadership Academy. This is great for nonprofit executives, either newer to your position or just need to get more information on being a nonprofit exec. Registration ends December 31st. So what a great time to end the year and start a new year with our Nonprofit Leadership Academy. So of course, this wouldn't be possible without the support of PNC Bank. They have sponsored our Breakfast on Board sessions this year that has helped us bring this to you at no cost. So again, thank you to PNC. And I'm going to ask Aaron Bowers to share some words at this time. Aaron is an area manager and senior vice president for PNC Bank. He leads the retail bank distribution network for Central Pennsylvania, which encompasses over 45 bank branch locations. Branch locations include several in York County. He has been with PNC Bank for 24 years and a proud board member of the Cultural Alliance of York County and a proud resident of York County. I will throw it to you, Aaron.
Well, good morning, everyone, and certainly thank you to Leadership York for having me here today. Obviously, my name is Aaron Bowers, as Craig had mentioned, and I lead PNC's retail network here in Central Pennsylvania. I'm certainly honored to be representing PNC and to be a part of this important discussion this morning. PNC has certainly pivoted alongside of our community in learning to stay connected differently during this pandemic, whether it was shifting to remote working platforms or using technology differently to stay connected to our customers and certainly our communities. We were determined to stay nimble in our business model. And specifically, we've leaned on a long-standing commitment centered on being a better company, creating better being a better employer, being a better neighbor. And we want to make sure that we're helping to drive creative thinking about keeping our associates and customers engaged. At PNC, we are proud to be a sponsor of this important conversation. I look forward to my time with all of you today, and I've already enjoyed our bantering before the session, and I look forward to the discussion that we'll have and the presenters that we're presenting today. So thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. So moving right along, I would like to introduce our presenters today. We have Joyce Santiago, who is the Executive Director of the York Area Housing Group. She is also our current 2020-2021 Board President for Leadership York. Wilda Alessi is our Executive Director. Jen Klimchak, as I said, is the Mentorship York Coordinator, and Jessica Hoffman is our Fund Development Specialist. And I'll throw it to you, ladies.
Great. Good morning. Welcome. We're going to start off this morning asking you to engage with us in the chat. So if you could put in the chat one word that describes how you are feeling this morning.
I'm going to read some of these as they come in. So we have fresh, cozy, grateful, excited, joyful, blessed. I'm surprised I don't see more tired or cold in there. Oh, there's cold. Fuzzy, I like that. Renewed. Oh, these are great. So as you can see, just in this room, there's a range of emotions, and something that we want you to keep in mind as we go through today's session is to think about the feelings that your donors and your staff and your board members are going through. They're feeling a similar range of emotions, and it's so important to meet them where they are when dealing with any type of communication. So just keep that in mind, how you're feeling. Chances are you probably would have given us a different word yesterday, and tomorrow morning you'd probably choose a different word. So give everyone some grace, give yourself some grace, and keep that in mind as you deal with your communication. And that being said, I'll want to go to the next one, Craig. We have one more poll. So Craig's going to launch a poll for us. 3 quick questions, if you don't mind taking them. Just to kind of gauge where we are and how connected we feel to our staff, to our board, and to our donors. So if you can take a time to put that, and we're going to revisit those results a little later in the presentation, but just want to get a quick gauge of where we stand. And Craig, once the majority has voted, you can take that away and I'll pass it to Wilda.
We're almost halfway there. We're good, Jess.
Okay, so thank you for sharing your thoughts on the polls. Very interesting. As Jess said, we'll get into that a little bit later, but it was interesting, I think, with the exception of within regards to your donors, everyone's feeling less connected. So right now, nothing feels normal. Routines have gone out the window. It feels impossible to predict what tomorrow will bring, even snow. We didn't know exactly how much of that we were going to get. You're fighting to maintain control over your personal and professional lives. There's one thing that's easy to control, but often gets overlooked in times of struggle and crisis, and that's staying connected and communicating. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So at the core of staying connected is communicating. And good communication is always important, but even more so during crisis. And it's very easy when crisis hits, it's human nature to kind of withdraw, and you kind of go into that fight or flight mode, and wanting to circle in and circle the wagons. And good leaders can do that. They know when and how it's appropriate to circle wagons and pull in, but then they also step out and they lead. So as Craig mentioned, as we go along in the chat, please feel free to share your questions, how you've stayed connected, how you've seen others stay connected in a unique way. We're looking forward to hearing from you as well, and how you guys have stayed connected during all of this. So what I'm going to share is, from the perspective of the chief executive, the executive director of a nonprofit in crisis, how did we stay connected with our staff and board? So back in June, Forbes published an article on how employees need to feel connected and leaders have to be human. And one of the things that struck me with that article and kind of stuck out to me was that it's critical to rebuild a connection for employees to the company's mission. So reminding and bringing people back to the mission, how we deliver our services, our products, how we interact with people might change, but the mission remains the same. And for Leadership York, that was a huge, huge shift. A lot of you have gone through our programs. Everything that we do centers around bringing people together physically. And, depending what program you went through, also, challenging the concept of personal space. So when, shutdown came and COVID restrictions came into play, all of that went out the window. But our mission to train, connect, and inspire people to serve in the York community didn't change. So our challenge became, how are we going to deliver programming in an impactful way when how we've done it for 40 plus years is no longer a valid way? We can't do it that way right now. And so that was one of the things I think as a staff we had to keep going back to, was the purpose of our programming is still the same. We still have to figure out how we're going to do that, but how we're going to do that is going to change. So staying connected to that and driving that back and keeping people focused in on that was very important. So from the board perspective, what did our board need to know, and how did we stay connected with them? So again, as I mentioned, the impact on our programming was huge. So making sure that our board, our governing board, understood the impact on programming, understood how we were progressing forward, the shifts that we were making, how we were dealing with programming, was important to communicate that to them. They also needed to be aware of funding shortfalls. So right in the midst of shutdown, we started recruiting for our fall programs. And so we, had a certain budget in mind, or certain budget for this year. We unfortunately didn't meet that with two of our programs, one of those being our flagship program. It was very, and also a majority of our earned income. So sharing that information with the board, keeping the board up to date on where we were with recruitment, And then how are we going to address funding shortfalls? What opportunities are there for new funding to help relieve some of the stress that put on our budget? And then the other thing they needed to know was what was the impact on our operations. So from our day-to-day operations, we don't have set office hours. Leadership York, as most of our staff are part-time, we don't have set office hours, and we're delivering program off-site. But the board still needed to know how was the office operating, how was, staff was set up at home. We were able to continue on as normal as possible under the circumstances, but that all needed to be communicated to the board. So one of the things in how we were communicating that and staying connected to the board and keeping the board connected to the organization. I think when shutdowns hit, getting on the phone with Joyce, our board president, and saying, okay, Joyce, how are we going to meet? Do our bylaws allow for us to meet virtually? And making that transition and getting everybody the information that they needed and letting them know that we were going to continue meeting, and we were just going to do it via Zoom versus in person. The other thing was more frequent emails. I try to communicate with the board between board meetings. I think at one point they may have been getting weekly emails with updates, trying not to inundate them with information, but also making sure they had the information that they needed in order to, again, govern the organization, so that they could speak if anybody asked questions, that they knew how we were operating. And I think just letting them know how we were doing, asking them how they were doing, very important. So the other side of that is, again, from an executive director perspective, what did our staff need to know and how do I stay connected with them? Again, part-time staff, but somehow, everybody's working different schedules, but I think we would often find ourselves, there's at least, several times a month, if not at least once a day or once a week, where everyone was in the office at the same time. We were very tight-knit staff. So when now we're all suddenly working home alone, well, at least alone from each other, and in our home. So letting them know that they weren't in this alone. We were still here as a staff to support one another, to figure out together how we were going to do this. What did they need from me as the executive director? And I think most importantly in connecting with the staff is to meet them where they were and where they are. So understanding what their situation at home might be now. And Jen will talk more about that perspective from a colleague or from a staff member perspective, but having empathy and understanding what the staff was dealing with. So how we stayed connected, I think we came up with we did some things that I think some other people and other organizations that have seen done. But previously, pre-COVID, we were meeting as a staff quarterly, maybe a little bit more often than that if it was warranted. What we started doing was meeting weekly and what we call staff connections to share information. There was a lot of, again, everything shifted. Everything that we did shifted. So having weekly connections, meetings on Zoom to just share information, to share ideas, I think in some way being more efficient so that 3 or 4 people weren't doing the same work, but sharing information so that someone else could use the information that someone else had already gathered. There was one thing that we were doing before COVID that helped us stay connected, or helped me stay connected to the staff. And that was doing one-on-ones as part of a performance management process. So we had moved from a performance evaluation, which is your annual evaluation process, to a performance management where we would meet. I meet one-on-one with staff, every staff member once a week. And those meetings are intended to not last any longer than 30 minutes. In normal times. During COVID, sometimes they lasted much longer than that. Sometimes they lasted an hour. There were a few that lasted 2 hours. And the purpose of that was not just to catch up and hear what was happening and to provide guidance, or just to, just talk about what's going on as things were changing so rapidly, but it was also a time for us to connect. It was a time for me to listen. And it was a time for us to share. So, as much as my staff needed to share and talk about what they were dealing with, so did I. So just to be able to share with each other things that we were dealing with, how we were feeling about things. So it really, I think, provided us with an opportunity to get to know one another and connect maybe even more strongly than we would if we were in person in the office. So I think those, there was a lot of things that we did prior to COVID that once COVID, I was like, thank God we did that. That work, it made the transition a lot smoother. That was one of those things I think that having that in place prior to going into this helped us stay connected as a staff. And again, Jen will share some more of what we've done. So in hindsight, because I've thought about this before, have given this some thought. And if I had to do it over again, what would I do differently? And I think for me, one of the things that was that I would do and need to start doing and reiterating is reinforcing communications. So, there's communication, but it doesn't mean it's good communication. And so reinforcing communication. So if something's shared verbally, following that up in writing, and vice versa. So if it's shared in writing, then following up verbally. And I think one of the things to remember that I need to remember too is everybody's overwhelmed. Our brains are so full of information and trying to keep track of everything that is, nothing's in a routine. So trying to keep a track of everything, we need to hear information multiple times in order for it to stick. So again, not just being like, well, it was out there, so people need to, they have the information, but again, reinforcing that and reiterating that information time and time again goes back to understanding where people are at and what else they might be dealing with in life right now. So that's kind of the very broad overview of how, as an executive director, I stayed connected with our board that governs and our staff that makes all the magic happen here at Leadership York. So Joyce, as our board president, can you share how you stayed connected to the organization in that capacity? And then also as a fellow executive director of a nonprofit that provides essential services, how did you stay connected to your clients and your staff?
All right. Good morning, everyone. And I do apologize. I have a cough drop in my mouth, so I'm not trying to be rude, but I don't want to start hacking. But yes, so as board chair for Leadership York, I think I speak on behalf of all the board members that Wilda and her team did a great job in communicating information with us, always making sure we were in a loop and we were informed. So thank you, all of Leadership York, for what you do. In our organization, York Area Housing Group, I'm going to kind of talk about how we stay connected with the board, the staff, and those that we serve. So in regards to our board, back in, last year, I kind of get confused what year I'm in, but last year we noticed that there were some challenges with board members getting to our meetings because we meet at noon. And that could be difficult, especially if you live far away from the city. So we decided to do a virtual format starting in 2020. So we were already geared up to start meeting via Zoom in January. And then I kind of chuckled because at that very first board meeting in January, everybody came. I think it might've been a little intimidating of the whole virtual format, and I get it. But since then, we've been meeting for our board and our committee meetings. We've been doing a virtual format. Attendance has been great. It's been so good that I'm really concerned that when the pandemic is over, how do we transition back into the office, back into our normal standard meeting? And I am going to pose that question in chat because I would love to hear your thoughts on, how do you pull that back in-house? I also meet with board members through the telephone, through email communications, like I said, virtual format, and that could be either scheduled or impromptu, and they're always there. So that's good. And we try really hard to make sure they know what's going on involving the organization and involving the staff. And then in speaking of the staff, so this was a really tough year in trying to figure out how to still do our quarterly team building, staff educational events. But we did it through a virtual format, and it's actually been fun. The staff are receptive to getting the information that we're sharing. And then I think they kind of look forward to seeing what new thing that we could do virtually. So we jazz it up by doing a virtual escape room. That's a whole lot of fun. We've even had lunch delivered at the same time to all the different locations. We did some emoji bingo for like a 2-month period. And pretty much it was based on, well, the joys of winning was, you had bragging rights for a good while. And then we also just did our holiday event the other day, and that was a lot of fun. I think I do have a picture on my Facebook if you want to see us trying to draw a snowman on our head on a paper plate. But the goal is to stay engaged with them, so that they know we're still around. So we're still doing meetings, we just had to move it to a virtual format. We still do telephone communications, email communications. What's really big is to either send an email or to make a telephone call and just say good morning and how can I help you? That goes a long way with staff and feeling that you really do care. And also for them to feel that they're connected. We're working on a modified schedule where we have no more than 2 people in the office at the same time. So that big team image that we use, that team, we're big on team. And so so much so that we sell that as a benefit of our organization. And so we don't want people to feel, not connected to that, not feeling like a team, that they're on their own. So we're going to start this Friday morning chats. And behind the scenes, we really want to talk about COVID, but for the staff, we told them we could talk about whatever it is you want to talk about on Friday mornings for a good half an hour. Bring your questions, bring your thoughts, whatever it is you want to speak about, let's speak about it. Because we don't want people, we're already spread out among multiple sites, but we don't want people to have that feeling that we're on our own and that we're still together. And then with those we serve, that would be our residents. And so, yes, we are a landlord, but we're not your typical landlord. We do have a lot of compassion. So we make it a point to know what's going on in the community so that we can in turn share that with our residents. Many of our residents don't have your traditional family members. So whatever we find out as far as what the community is offering, whether it's food or any other resource, we make sure we get that information to our residents. We either telephone them or we send notices to them and put it around on their door. We participate in a whole lot of local, state, regional, any kind of form that we can do virtually, just so that we can get that information to them, and then just for us to stay on top of what best practices are. For us, however we can get that information, not only to, like I said, our residents and our staff, we're just going to do it. We kind of have this mentality that we're in it together. It's not just me, we're thinking of our residents and we're thinking about our whole community, period. So staying connected, however you do it, is so vital, is so key right now. And then, so I'm going to put my question I had in the chat, and then I'm going to kick it over to Jen, because I think if I still keep talking, I'm going to start hacking. So I apologize. Your turn, Jen.
Thanks, Joyce. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. As Craig mentioned earlier, and as you can see here, I am the Mentorship York coordinator, but I also have the pleasure of doing the marketing for Leadership York. And so my job is really to try to get the message out to everyone about not only what we're doing, but what our alumni and our staff are doing to inspire others in the community. So during the COVID time, even though terrible things are happening all over the place, I really looked for folks for inspiration. And so we had a few fly students that went out into the community and did some really awesome and amazing things. And they contributed a lot of what they did in the community back to the fly program and the leadership skills that they learned from Joan and the program in general. We also had some other alumni in the community that were out there helping others in the time of need the best they could. And so I really looked for those folks to highlight them in our social media campaigns. Some of the things that I did, I was featuring alumni. We did a series on courage and self-care, because we know as leaders, how important it is to take care of yourself so you're able to give yourself to others. We also, I was inspired by Leadership Harrisburg did a series on leadership in general. And what they did is they took the word leadership, and each day for 10 days, they talked a little bit about each one of those letters and what they would represent. So we did a campaign on that, which was really nice to not have to reinvent the wheel. And I was very thankful that another organization had that information that we could share with everyone. As far as this time of year, I meet with Jess weekly, and I was inspired by her for the last 90 days of this year to challenge everyone to keep going with their leadership skills. And whether that was inspirational messages, again, encouraging folks to read, to take time for themselves. And then we also have to stay connected with our staff and our coworkers. So one thing that I really try to do is if I see someone that's struggling personally or having a bad day, I just try to send them notes of encouragement. So we have a few folks on staff that have some youngsters at home that we're having to do our jobs, do everything at home, and then also help them virtually with their schooling. So just sending little words of encouragement and saying, hang in there, we're in this together, we'll get through this. And so just keeping a positive spin and trying to stay on top of all the positivity that's coming out of this. Some of the things we also did over the summer was I asked the staff to share some of their favorite songs that really had inspired them and taken their minds off of the negativity of what was happening, and also share the leadership books that they were reading. And so people had time on their hands, and it was nice to take that moment to just sit back and read a book, and which with our busy lives before COVID, we probably wouldn't have had that opportunity. And again, just checking in on folks. And I have to say, as a staff member, Wilda did a fantastic job of keeping us in the loop of everything that was going on, all the changes, and always making sure that we were doing okay. So she would say to us in our weekly meetings, you know, if you're having trouble finishing your work throughout the day, just do it another time of the day as long as it's getting accomplished, which was very encouraging, because then I could spend time with my family and do some other things to kind of keep my mind off of everything that was going on. So I would just encourage folks to check in on one another, drop a note of inspiration. I was talking yesterday when we were going through this, and just letting everybody know that I try to take just a few minutes every week and maybe send 5 notes of encouragement to friends or family, and just let them know that they're important to you, and just make sure that they know that you're there if they need them. So again, I'm so thankful to be a part of an organization that really cares about one another. And we do special things for each other all the time. We celebrate one another's birthdays on Zoom. We do drive-bys and shout at each other in our driveways, and just try to keep that spirit up, because I think that really keeps everybody going. And thank you again for being here. So next up we have Jess, and she's going to talk to us about alumni engagement.
Hi, everyone. So staying connected to your donors. We've touched on staff, board members. So here I am. My biggest thing to tell you is that you need to be flexible, which I'm sure we've all learned by now. So Mindy Christian's on here with Creative York. She's going to judge me, but here's my plan. Here are the plans that we had before COVID hit. You just got to rip them up. Just got to rip them up, because it's not going to be any good. You're going to have to rethink it. You're going to have to redo things. The important thing is that you continue to plot out what your top priorities are, and then reverse engineer how you're going to get there. So the goals may remain the same. How you get there might look very differently, and that's okay. It goes back to giving yourself grace, just as everyone's mentioned before me. So when chaos increases, productivity can be one of the first things to suffer if you don't work hard to maintain control. So setting smaller, more frequent goals, that's going to really help you get there. You want to help combat that chaos. I'm obviously not here to tell you what your goals should be, but with the topic of today's session, I highly suggest you have some donor communication goals in place. So one example that I found, some organizations do a 5-10-10 goal for each day, which is 5 texts, 10 calls, and 10 emails. Obviously, that's going to look a little different if you work for a smaller organization or have a smaller donor base. But I thought that was a good strategy worth sharing, and one that I'm trying to adopt myself, because the biggest benefit of regular communication, obviously you're going to deepen those relationships, but you're going to learn a lot that you may not have learned before either. So I know since I adopted it, I learned that some people are in the same boat. They may have been up since 3:45 with their kid that is having nightmares about the tooth fairy and then worrying about virtual schooling on a snow day when they're presenting at a session. There may be someone else that's in that same boat, right? And there's other people that are struggling. They're having surgeries, they have layoffs, things like that, that I would not have known had those conversations not been brought up. So you can learn a lot more by listening about how people are doing right now and how they're gonna be able to support your organization without even having to ask those specific questions, just by putting in place some of those donor communication goals. So reach out now, reach out as often as you feel appropriate. The objective is to stay top of mind in all of their minds as they're going to decide who they're going to support this year. And that's for existing donors, but that's also for new donors. Just because it's time of crisis doesn't mean you should stop trying to cultivate new donors. So what does that look like? Obviously, it should be donor centric. And I preface this by saying, if you work in a nonprofit that it was an emergency, you were in danger of closing or not being able to provide your service, obviously that communication is going to look a little differently. You're going to have an emergency appeal. It's going to look different. But for normal conversation, normal stewardship, don't be that tone deaf person that calls someone and starts talking about all the great things that you're doing. Ask how they're doing. It goes back to what I just said. You're going to learn more about that response than you would through any other conversation. Humanize the touch point. If you don't listen to anything else I say, please soak that up. We should not be sending out communication just to check off a touch point right now. It's bigger than that. You want to aim to be useful. You want to seek to add value, not add to the chaos. You want to meet them where they are. I know Wilda mentioned that before, and take opportunities to let them know you're listening and that you really do care. So what does that look like? Just some various examples. So switching up your normal content. I know some organizations, I got emails about tips from their staff on how to make the most from working from home. And it was kind of entertaining to hear everyone else's take on it. There were activities to do with the kids and keep everyone from going stir crazy. And again, one of Jen's examples, she had art supplies dropped off for my boys, so I had something to do with them. So she was thinking of me there, and it really meant a lot. She mentioned our last 90 days challenge, just sharing some ways, some motivational quotes, some mental health tips, just sprinkling that in with our normal content to show that we do care about our donors. Virtual events, obviously you guys are here today. It still can be a part of your strategy to have virtual events. How you measure the success is certainly going to be different. Are things going to go wrong? Yes. Will the people always know that things went wrong? No. But giving donors and alumni and members, however you define them, giving them a chance to come together right now when so many people are feeling less connected is important, and it's beneficial. So please don't think that needs to come out of your strategy just because it's a little harder to execute. So now more than ever, I kind of don't like that phrase. I feel like we say it a lot, but now more than ever, it's not only about keeping up with your standard updates to donors. That's still very important. Don't get me wrong, but it's also putting that increased value on listening and just overall upping your stewardship game. So what did that mean to me? I'll give you some examples. That meant sending a congratulations card to an alumni who just bought their first house. It meant sending hand cream to a certain board member that may or may not be in attendance today when they shared how painful and cracked their hands were from the constant sanitizing. It meant reading the Community Courier. Yes, I read it. I don't know if anyone else does, but I read that when it comes in the mail. Maybe I'm bored, need to get some more hobbies. I don't know. But I saw that 2 Executive Connections alumni, their daughter was named Salutatorian. Sending them a note just to say we saw it and they should be proud and we're proud for them. meeting someone for coffee. I met someone for coffee to get advice from them, but they talked about the elf on the shelf tradition that all the parents love so much and how sad their daughter was going to be when they had to send it back to the North Pole. So in my thank you card to her, I included a flat Stanley book and a cutout. So her daughter had something to look forward to. She probably wanted to curse me because it was something else to do. But just so her daughter had something to look forward to. And that didn't take a lot of effort. And it was $3. I mean, doesn't those things, but I was listening, and you take that extra step. Or if a donor admits to you that they cannot say no when a kid picks up the phone and makes an ask, it doesn't matter if they already donated this year. You have a Future Leaders of York graduates. Call them on Give Local York. It shows that you're listening. I didn't make him donate again. I just showed I was listening and presented the opportunity. So those are just, you got to think creative. You have to work even harder to stand out and stay noticed. I did not have a fundraising background before I took this job, but I love connecting with people. I love relationship building, and that's the part that you have to grip onto, especially during times of crisis. Go back to your roots and just be human. So that's my biggest thing to you. I don't even know how I am on time, Craig, but that was the one I really wanted to stress. Just humanize that touch point. There are a ton of, just one more minute, Craig, but there are a ton of examples I could have shared, though. I chose to share those examples of things that we've done because I'm really proud of the way that Wilda and Joyce and the rest of the board have not only supported, but encouraged all of us to see opportunity where others see challenge. And I encourage all of you to do the same. And obviously that's going to help you when you go to tee up your ask as well. When you do go to tee up your ask, you need to be honest, you need to be direct, you need to be clear. When people ask how you're doing, let them know. If you had to cancel your event or your enrollment is down, you need to let them know, or else they're going to be confused why you're asking for a donation down the road. And just be clear in what you're asking for and how they can help. Make it easy to find information. And there are a ton more resources out there. It's all about finding ones that speak to you. So I know for me, I'm a little quirky, if you couldn't tell already through this, but I love Donor Relations Guru. If you haven't heard of her, there's a ton of COVID specific communication swaps that they put on there. People all over the world put on. So going there and seeing the resources that they have, and productive fundraising as well. Chad Barger, he took a course when I first started with the organization. They just look at things a little differently, and that is welcomed right now in times of crisis. So there are many more out there. I encourage you to find ones that speak to you. And so now I will wrap up by going back to the results. As we could see in the beginning, we overall as a group feel less connected to staff, less connected to the board, but more connected to donors. So that's great. But I just was wondering, does anyone want to elaborate or share why they answered the way they did, or how something that they learned from today might help them change that answer before we get into the Q&A?
Hi, can I share?
Sure.
Thanks, Jess. Good morning, everybody. This is Chad Myers. I have the privilege of being on the board at Leadership York. Great organization, great staff, doing great things through COVID and in general. I chose that I felt more connected to our staff just because before COVID, we were meeting monthly as a group, and they were typically in-person meetings. The staff meets up in Harrisburg. I'm the only person from York in the group. So I would drive up, and it would be fun. If I had other meetings going on, I would call in. But when COVID hit, we started to meet weekly, I think, and that's what you guys said you did. So, and then we were Zooming, so everybody's got a video camera, and it was different than me calling in, and I could see everybody, and everybody gives updates. So, and we were doing it just on a more frequent basis. So I just felt like I feel more connected to my staff now than I did prior to this whole thing happening. So just my 2 cents there. And thank you for the working hands. That poor board member with the cracked hands, that was me. You guys are awesome.
Okay, if no one else wants to share, we can look at the chat and see. I know Joyce posed a question earlier. If anyone else has questions, please feel free to share.
Angela, would you mind sharing? Samantha had asked in the chat about finding ideas for creative engagement. And I know we're looking at, Leadership York is looking at something, doing something between the holidays before the end of the year virtually, but then also Angela and I are also involved with the Junior League of York, and they did something as well. So Angela, would you just mind sharing that resource for Samantha's benefit?
So the one that we were looking at for our team as sort of for me, it was going to be all right, the secret's out. It's like a team present in a sense, was something called Game Night Out. And since we tend to run a lot of the team buildings for other groups, I thought it'd be nice if we got to do a team building, but we didn't have to run it, or that one of us had to be in charge of it. And so Game Night Out is a company, it's out of Chicago. And so they pivoted and started doing virtual game nights out, and they would be the host. So they will run all the games for you. And so you just sign up for a time slot, and you can have, their basic plan is you can have up to 12 participants for 90 minutes. And they tell you what the games are, they describe everything, and they, if you had to have breakout rooms, they would take care of all those things. And they do larger groups as well. So I think their main target are probably smaller family groups, family and friends, but they also have a corporate arm. But that's what we were looking at for our group. And they're very responsive. I've been on the chat with them. I find doing chats is a quicker way while I'm right there on the website than calling them. So they're very helpful, and we can keep you posted because we haven't done it yet. It's a plan for the holiday break. And then I don't have all the details on the Junior League. I don't know, Wilda, did you participate? But they were doing it's like a murder mystery. I think they all played a role. So, and once again, it was another company, I believe, that hosted that. So every person got a part and a role and was probably given information about the scenario of what happened. And then they all played their roles, and then they determined who the murderer was. And I know, Wilda, if you had any other information from that one.
I do not, but I just think, like, again, looking at that, like, you know, we typically around the holidays would get together as a staff, and it's like, what are we going to do now that we can't do that? And how can you, again, do a game night or do something where we can just have fun and relax and, you know, involve more than an adult beverage. So yeah, and it is nice. I'm looking forward to it, just to be able to be a participant instead of having to plan it all out and do it all. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. And I think we're having, you know, we can bring a +1. So it's another time for us to kind of connect as a team, full team, and the people who are closest to us. So, and then Joyce had posted her question, when the pandemic is over, how do you plan to transition back to in-person meetings? Are you planning to transition back to in-person meetings? Have you, if you have a board or if you are a board member, what are your thoughts on that? I know we were talking yesterday, we're very interested to hear how others, what others are planning or what other people are thinking about moving back to in-person meetings when this is all over. Because I think Leadership York has also seen an increase in, not that we had our attendance is fairly good, but we were concerned when we transitioned to Zoom, and with everything going on, you know, are people still going to be able to make meetings now that they're, you know, having to school their children and then doing all this other stuff? And our attendance has been phenomenal. So, so just opening it up to you guys and sharing what are your thoughts, and have you thought about it? Have your board members thought about it?
I'll chime in. We've adjusted to Zoom pretty well. We do get better attendance sometimes that way because people can just stop what they're doing and pop in, and rather than drive somewhere, make that commitment, spend the time. It is easier to do this. We also did purchase one of the OWL cams so that we can do the hybrid type. We can meet with a group together and still Zoom with the rest of the group, and everybody's still visible, and it's pretty effective that way. We've been using that for our staff meetings. I'll go in, and if anybody wants to come in, they can come in, but it's totally up to them. So it's been a mix each week, and we moved to a different place in the building each week. We were on the stage in the studio this week, and sitting on blankets, separated from one another, masked, those that were together, but still able to make a connection. So I think we're not going to let go of it. We're going to just find creative ways to use it.
Thanks, Ann.
Does anyone else, as an executive director with a board that also is serving on a board, I'm like, it is very convenient. It is very convenient, especially for 7:30 in the morning, to just stroll into this office and hop online. And I know our board members with young children, being able to take care of them, turn their camera off, get them fed, get them ready for school, do their thing, has been a great benefit for them. So that's something I'd be interested to hear. Maybe we're not at that point yet because there's not quite the light at the end of the tunnel where we're saying, okay, in person is feasible. This might be something that we need to revisit and connect with, again, closer to that time. But I do like, Anne, from your perspective, the thought of, and I know we've had that conversation of not letting go of, just because we can go back to normal, what have we been doing during this time that we shouldn't let go of? But does anyone else have any creative ways that you've stayed connected or have seen people and organizations connecting?
Well, this is Tammy. Hi, everyone. We're in a completely different situation where we never went virtual. Well, I shouldn't say never. As far as our staff, we continue to operate because of our nutrition program. We were considered essential. So our staff, we're virtual today, obviously, because of the snowstorm, but we've been going into the office every day, except when one or more of us were quarantined with COVID. But yeah, our big challenge was trying to connect with our constituents, our older adults. And I know my staff would agree when I say the past 10 months, I probably worked harder the past 10 months than I did the whole 15 years I've been at Windy Hill. Because we had to completely recreate and reinvent the way we were providing services and programs to our older adults. So it's been an extremely challenging year. I feel that we've done a good job, or as good of a job as we possibly could. But we've worked really, really hard. And my concern right now is, providing some respite almost for my staff because, we've really had to step up to the plate. And, I have a really, I have a strong work ethic, and I think the challenge that I've seen is maybe my work ethic's a little bit different, and I expect a lot. So we've had challenges that way with a crazy year. And, I really am concerned about, I'm thankful to the ideas that I've been hearing because, I am looking forward to doing something with the staff.
Thank you for sharing, Tammy.
We did a very simple thing yesterday with Fly where I set up, because it's so long and I thought the kids couldn't sit that long. When we took breaks between speakers, we had them do a scavenger hunt in their house, and we just assigned them different items to bring back. And that kind of just broke it up. And you could do that with adults too. In fact, a friend of mine saw it on Facebook and said, we need to do this. This is fun. So we had them bring things back that had to do with joy. Some of them brought back Christmas signs that said joy. Some of them brought their kitten that brings them joy. So they could interpret the word any way they wanted. And we did that, something that makes noise. So something that flies, something to do with flying since we're fly, things like that. So you can just, and we saved a bunch and I'm going to use them again next month. So if anybody has other ideas, I'm looking for them. Because it's a long day to go from 8 o'clock to 2:30.
So we are approaching our 9 o'clock hour here. So just want to wrap it up so we're not holding anyone over. And so earlier this spring, when the pandemic hit, the Board Development Committee kind of put our heads together and thought that an online series would be a great way to stay connected with our community, to provide the resources and the information that our nonprofit community needs, especially at this time. So again, I would like to thank PNC Bank, the sponsor for this series, that made this possible to allow us to make this free to everyone. And we have been putting all these sessions on Facebook Live, which I know you see only about 20 people in attendance today, but from what we see from our administration part on Facebook, we are getting hundreds of views. So we're really reaching a larger audience than we ever thought we would. So again, thank you to PNC Bank, to Ellen, and to Aaron for joining us and for sponsoring us. So again, the Google form evaluation link is in your email. If you could please go back to that, we greatly appreciate any information you share with us. And I would just, again, like to say thank you to our lovely presenter. Awesome job, ladies. And again, thank you to PNC Bank one more time. So from Leadership York, I'd like to wish everyone a happy holiday. Stay safe out there. If you have to go out, if you don't, stay home. Clean your sidewalk, clean your driveway. Don't forget about those folks who are delivering many, many packages today. So Merry Christmas, everyone.